Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com as well as on Amazon. I also have another announcement. If you are having problems with your solar panels made by Sonova Generac Systems, please contact the Attorney General in your state and fill out the complaint form. Now, I've got a brand new guest on. I have investigative reporter Richard.luthmann on. We're going to talk about the Monica Giardi's case, as well as cancel culture and other topics. So I welcome you, Richard.luthmann. I'm very happy to have you on.
Maryann, thank you for having me.
We have a lot to go over. This poor Monica has been in prison for how long? It's just,
Well, right now the latest stint is 100. It's over 180 days, and she had been in before. This latest bit, they brought her in, and we don't know why she's there. She's under New Jersey law. After 180 days, they either have to release you or charge you with an indictment. And the indictment should have been in last week. It should have been in and filed and public for everybody to see. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if it's there, but what they did was there was a clerical error with respect to the Mendham, New Jersey Police Department, and they basically gave the government, or they said that they had 2 or 3 extra days from the date of arrest to put the indictment forward. And I think that they rushed to a grand jury after the 180-day period had lapsed. So 180 days from when she was taken in, they added like 3 days on there, which is unconstitutional. It's a violation of law. And then I think that they're working on it on a grand jury indictment, or they have one, or it hasn't been released. But they found a reason just to keep her detained, and it's really a disgrace what they're doing to this poor woman. And it's all because she forgot to put a couple of quotation marks on a Facebook post.
mhm.
So she was how this really all started was she had been a litigant in family court, and she really got it given to her by the Morris County, New Jersey establishment. Her ex-husband, John Ioannis, he is a firearms instructor in Morris Plains, New Jersey. So he has a great relationship with the police and the sheriffs and the prosecutors and everyone else, the entire establishment. And if her claims against him would have been entertained in the least, he would have lost his firearms. He would have lost his ability to possess firearms, and it would have been a problem for him and for the police. And so there was a vested interest in having his side of the story being the only side of the story that was heard. And I've reached out to Ioannis and to his new wife, Melanie Hempsey, and their attorney. And their attorney, came back at me and basically attacked me. He said that my attempts to try to get the other side of the story constituted harassment. And I said, buddy, you're a lawyer. I don't know what law school you went to, but you slept through the day that they taught the First Amendment, because that's not the way it works. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm asking your people for the truth. I want their side of the story. I want to provide a balanced reporting on what's going on. And so I want to know why this woman, who's probably 110 pounds soaking wet, is in jail, not in Morris County, which is a suburban county in New Jersey, maybe 40 minutes from the George Washington Bridge, but she is in jail in neighboring Essex County, which is the seat of Newark, New Jersey. It's one of the worst and sickliest cities in the country, and one of the worst sickliest jails population in the country, with respect to the people that are in there with her. And so, what is she doing in Newark, New Jersey? Why is she in the jail? Why is she still in the jail? And if you start to connect the dots, you get into a rabbit hole of corruption in the New
Mhm.
Jersey system. And I've published on this extensively. I have several articles on this on my Substack and other outlets. But just going into the different players, the biggest one being this Judge Bogart, Peter Bogart, in Morris County, New Jersey, and he's the one that initially started the issue with the quote unquote terroristic threats.
Mhm.
And so the terroristic threat that this 110-pound mom, made in New Jersey, that they took to be that she was going to do something crazy, was her quoting back the judge's statement from the bench without using quotation marks.
Mm.
So the judge said to Monica, if you don't do what I say, you'll never see your children again. That's what this judge said to Monica. It's in the transcripts, on the records, everything else. And Monica says, if you don't do what I say, Judge Bogart, if you don't do what I say, you'll never see your children again. Her intent was to quote what Judge Bogart said, but she did not put the quotation marks. And so Judge Bogart took that to mean that his children, who are grown and out of the house and in their 20s, who are not being threatened by anybody, were under risk of threat. And so that was a terroristic threat. That formed the basis of the initial detention. And then thereafter, there's a whole bunch of orders and consents and all this other legal mumbo jumbo. But at bottom, she went into jail initially for a unlawful reason, right? An unconstitutional reason, speaking First Amendment right in the public square or the digital public square today on Facebook.
Mhm.
And then they've just thrown paper upon paper upon paper on her. And this judge, I published the audio of this judge from the bench speaking in another case, calling Monica crazy. She's a crazy woman. We're gonna pick her up. I'm gonna get Adult Protective Services to come pick her up. She's crazy. She's this guy. I don't know what his deal is, but I don't think people like that have the temperament to be on the bench, especially in
Exactly.
family. It's really a disgrace. We have a lot of, and it's a shame. We see this all over the place.
Mhm.
You have judges you have some judges out there that are excellent judges. You do. You have some judges that are
Mhm.
really, scholarly, know the law. You have other judges that are good interpersonal people that are problem solvers. There are different skill sets that different people have, and it's the same with judges. And you'll get a good family court judge every so often. The best one probably
Rare.
ever was Judge Judy. Judge
Mhm.
Judy was a family court judge in New York. She was a tough cookie. And she left the family court and became Judge Judy that we know. But she was a great judge in New York. She didn't let anything go by. She was on top of people like hawks. And if we had Judge Judy's in family court, then there wouldn't be a problem. Problem is we
Mhm.
don't have Judge Judy's. We have people that are just kind of, it's either the people are there. It's like rookie hazing. They just got on the bench and they're in family court for a little while until they can get to the commercial division or someplace else. Or you get people that are just kind of mailing it in. They show up and this, that, and the other thing, and
Mhm.
they just clearing dockets, and they could care less. They let the lawyers and the appointed people, the guardians ad litem, the attorneys for the children, and the court appointed psychiatrists and psychologists run the show, and they don't get in the way of the gravy train. And so that becomes a problem. It becomes a real institutional problem. This guy Bogart is one of these problems. He just seems to be a problem. It's not the only case, and I'll be publishing more. I have another case coming out where the same judge, Judge Peter Bogart, in Morris County, New Jersey, basically has an expert witness that's submitted in a case, and this expert witness is actually a very accomplished a person who runs a foundation about the family courts. And the judge said, look, this woman is clearly an expert, a very good expert. She's well published, but she talks about family court corruption. Therefore, she will not be an expert in my court. And he denied that expert on that basis. He also denied a person who puts pro se papers in and said,
Oh,
I know that you put in papers and they're pro se papers. They don't, I'm not even going to really consider them because you wrote them in their pro se. And if you look at the legal arguments that the person made, the person is a very intelligent woman, and she actually wrote very good legal arguments. So I'm going to be publishing those legal arguments alongside Judge Bogart's comments, and I'll let the readership decide whether this judge did the right thing. So that's going to be coming out shortly about Judge Bogart, who is one of Monica Ciardi's judges in New Jersey. Now, Monica, I'll get back to her. She's still in jail in Newark. Now she finally, I believe, has a tablet. She's been in there for a long time, months and months and months,
Mhm.
without a tablet and without ability to really contact people. Now she has a tablet, but she's not able to get all of her legal materials and everything else to her. And she's not in great health. She's a little woman. She's got pre-existing conditions going in, and jail is the worst place to be. It's
Mhm.
basically medieval medicine at best.
Right. Or
So
you don't get it at all, which is
you
a
don't
human
get it at
rights
all.
violation.
Yeah, and so and it's Newark, so it is what it is. So
Mhm.
the problem that she's got big problems there, and on top of that, you have allegations about a Morris County prosecutor, an assistant prosecutor, who knowingly is shepherding this violation that's allowing her to stay in jail longer. The 180 days have passed, and so if you're a prosecutor, I get that you want to go and dispense justice. You want to go hard, but you don't go foul. You don't go below the belt, and you don't try to keep people in. And the question is, if you have a prosecutor trying to keep this 110-pound mother in prison, she's probably being told to keep her in, and that's the sick part about it. That I can understand if you had somebody in there that you suspect them of a couple of murders, or her of a couple of murders, or really a bad dude. I can't understand what she's going to do other than speak and expose corruption. So then it goes back to what's the real threat here? Her threat is her speech. Her threat is her exposition of what has been done to her and what's been done to so many others. And we have a little inconvenient fact for the corrupt, and that's called the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And the First Amendment allows for people like me and the press and you to talk about these issues. It allows all of us, the free speech clause allows all of us to talk about this in the public square and raise these issues and shine a light on the corruption. And the Monica case is very interesting because it's so multifaceted. And I'm just topically talking about it today. But if you really want to dig deep into it, the judge who was presiding in the divorce in the family court is no longer a judge. He's actually the county prosecutor in the neighboring county in Somerset. And the proceedings were almost put into Somerset, but they couldn't go there because of the conflict there. But, you have a judge in Morris and the Morris County establishment in family court. You have the county prosecutor in Somerset. You have some very powerful people aligned against this woman. And Monica's actually suing the Somerset County prosecutor right now. So there's a pending case that she has that he's a defendant in, and that several others she's suing. So there's a lot of conflicts here. There's a lot of smoke, right? Mm-hmm. And when there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a lot of fire here because we've seen violations already. So it's a disgusting case. I'd love to see her get out. I'd love to see her get out of the jail, and I'd love to see her be in a position where she can start fighting this from the outside, which is, mm-hmm. I think, is her only chance. And she's got two beautiful children, mm-hmm. and she has a situation where the husband and the new wife were engaged in activity allegedly that is it crosses the line. They were engaged in their own surveillance. They were engaged in their own setups, that type of thing, and they keep the children away from their mother. That's mm-hmm. what they're doing. It's just an egregious situation all around. And I know there are so many. There are so many stories like Monica's where these different themes are there. Hers is one of the most egregious I've seen in a while. But there are very egregious stories out there, and I talk to a lot of people in the family courts, and that are dealing with this stuff. And it's beyond the pale. It happens a lot. It happens a lot in the United States, all over the place. Mm-hmm. I find out it happens a lot more in for wealthy urban and suburban areas than most places. I'm hesitant to say blue states, but it tends to be. States like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Virginia, Illinois, Pennsylvania, California. These are the places where you see these family courts really, really happening. Like Mike Volpe, who I have a podcast, the Unknown Podcast. He's my podcast mate. He's a family court writer, investigative journalist as well. And he's in Chicago. And he just, one of the big people he focuses on is Bierman LLP. And they're a factory. They're a family court factory. They control the family courts in Cook County, Chicago, and the adjoining counties. And it's just it's a fraudulent business model is the best way I can put it. And I've been working with Dave Weigel, family court mm-hmm. fraud warrior. He is that's what he coined that. He said, "Look, I'm a Wall Street guy. I'm a top fixed income manager. I look at businesses, and look at financials for a living. I have to understand the business model, and the business model of the family courts is fraud. Mm-hmm. That's what the business model of the family courts are. And there's nowhere else that the operation could run the way the family court runs with absent fraud. And it's a situation where it's a real it's about the money. You follow the money and you get to your solution there. So, and I'll talk a little bit about Family Court Fraud Warrior. David has the Family Court Fraud Warrior Project, and the Family Court Fraud Warrior Project is one where we're trying to create awareness. We're trying to create a group that we can get together and bring our voices together to show the establishment, the family court establishment, that you cannot continue this divide and conquer and isolate and traumatize.
Mhm.
And so what we're doing with David is David's taking what he does for a living, quantitative analysis, and he's using that as the backbone to show the fraud in family courts. So he can take different papers and using AI and look at, and we can find just basic quantitative analysis. And I'll give you the simplest most basic thing. You put all your paperwork through, the transcripts of all your proceedings through, and we get a breakdown. We get a scorecard. And
Mhm.
one of the metrics on the scorecard is how much did each party speak? How much did the one parent speak as opposed to the other? If you have a pro se parent, especially versus one that's represented by counsel, how much did the judge speak? A lot of these cases you see, the judge speaks maybe 25% of the time. You'll have the other attorney will speak, 50, 60, 70% of the time. Sometimes you have the parent, if they're pro se, especially speak maybe 10% of the time. They're in single digits. So when you talk about, constitutional rights, you talk about the opportunity to be heard. Is that really an opportunity to be heard when you have an adversary that speaks, 10 times as much as you do?
Right.
It's a little bit. So that's a very basic example, very simple example of what quantitative analysis can do. And there's a lot more sophisticated stuff that David and the Family Court Fraud Warrior Project are doing. But that is one of the things that he's doing over there. And he also has a My 3 Minute campaign that he just launched,
Mhm.
where you give your 3 minutes about family court.
Mhm.
Take the camera, turn it around on yourself, and give a 3 minute. Just your feelings. What happened to you? Tell your story in 3 minutes, and then upload it. Upload it to Instagram. Upload it to social media. Tag it My 3 minutes, and we're going to and send it along to David at familyfraudwarrior.com, and he's going to be coordinating the group
Mhm.
all these different stories. The big issue, what he's trying to do, what several others with him are trying to do, is I think we have a moment in history that is unprecedented with respect to government change. And one of the drivers of the family courts in the United States is the Title 4D and 4E money. And that's the Violence Against Women Act. And that is a driver because a lot of these states receive their family court money because of the federal money. That's where they get. That's where they basically cover their budgets, shortfalls and everything else. And if you look at 4D and 4E, it motivates a domestic violence finding, or it motivates a domestic violence type framework in almost every case, so that money becomes available, or so that the court systems can make the case for the need for that money. And what that does is that is the type of situation that promotes, the intervention of the criminal justice system, which doesn't help anybody,
Mhm.
and it promotes the silver bullets, which we see
Mhm.
in
Oh,
family
yeah.
cases all the time. It promotes all this extraneous stuff that takes away from resolving family issues, resolving the matrimonial matter, resolving the child custody matters, and it creates additional drama and additional need for a court appointeds. Court
Mhm.
appointed this, court appointed that, court appointed this, court appointed that. And that's part of the fraud model that David has tapped into. But we're at a time where the government, and when just yesterday and today and you turn on the news, Elon Musk, Doge, they're cutting crazy stuff in the federal budget. Well, if you look at the multiplier of what the 4D and 4E funds alone have done to the family courts across the country, the case makes itself why that money should be cut to a certain extent. Now, there are points where that money is important. There are points where the initial intent of the Violence Against Women Act and it makes sense. You have to protect people who are victimized, but
Mhm.
it's got out of control. It's
Right.
out of control.
And also, Richard, I also through my podcast, I learned that CPS is involved with these domestic violence shelters. So they're also aiding and abetting this Title IV D and E.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's a one big web. It's a gigantic
Mhm.
web. You have the shelters. You have all these different non-for-profits. You have these different sub-governmental entities, governmental entities that are involved. And it's a big feeding trough. And the problem is, and I'll go back to Judge Judy. The
Mhm.
problem is, if you got a good judge, you can pull everybody into a courtroom and get a case resolved in an hour. I really feel that it's about the judge. If you got a good judge and you can cut through the bullshit in plain English, then you can get to now there are cases that are tough cases, and that's true. But I think 90% of the cases can be resolved if you take the drama, you take that. But that's what feeds these lawyers. That's
Mhm.
with the it's the Kramer versus Kramer type cottage business, the divorce industrial complex, as some call it. That's happened after when divorce became a thing back in the 70s. Well,
Mhm.
now everybody's divorce is Kramer versus Kramer. Everybody's divorce is the Woody Allen divorce, Woody Allen Mia Farrow. Everybody's divorce becomes that. The divorce becomes big business, and why are we at that point? Does it do anything to help anybody? Does it help the children? Does it do anything but traumatize them? Does it hurt the families? Yes. All it does is it's paying lawyers and court appointees and everything else. So we have to see. I think that obviously lawyers. There's a time for lawyers to be there and to make money and to do what they do, and they provide a great service in a certain circumstances. But the churn becomes the problem.
Mhm.
You have people that are in divorce cases that are carried out for years and years and years, and the families spend millions. And the problem is that if the second that they run out of money, the case tends to resolve itself magically. And you'll see that in courts. As soon as the both sides say we have no more money, you can't bleed us anymore, then they find a way to resolve the case. So and that's the fraudulent model. I've been doing great work also, and I mentioned her before. It was Jill Jones Soderman at the Foundation for the Child Victims of the Family Courts. She's the expert that I spoke about before. That they've tried to deny her, even though she's and this woman is a phenomenal woman. She founded the foundation. And she's been doing this work for decades, and she has just a wealth of knowledge on family court issues and trauma from a clinical perspective. She worked with some great people like Dr. Bandy Lee, who
Mhm.
is just a well accomplished and brilliant woman with respect to um, understanding domestic violence, understanding so many different areas. So she's a brilliant psychiatrist, and she has an excellent team over there. Theo Chino, who
Yeah.
Theo, who helps out over there with looking at billing and billing fraud and excessive billing with some of these attorneys. But there's a good group that she has over there, and so that's another group that I've been doing some good work with, and she's given me some egregious stories in the family courts and pointed me in that direction. So
Mhm.
she's been an excellent partner in trying to get to the bottom of the corruption. And the problem is that as soon as you start to try to tackle the corruption, you get tagged as a judge hunter, or you get tagged as disruptor, and that's the way. There's only a few of us that are out there that are covering the family courts in earnest.
Mhm.
Um, but the second the judge sees one of us walk in, and we kind of travel together in packs. I have Julie Holborn out in
Mhm.
California, and she's running into a problem right now where because of the fact that she is questioning what's happening in a case. So she tried to question witnesses, expert witnesses, parties, everything else. The judge wants to know who spoke to this journalist, who leaked this information. Which we have a First Amendment. I asked Julie. I said, Julie, when exactly did California become part of the Soviet Union? Can you give
Yeah.
me So it was it's one of those things where and so I might just start covering this case for that reason because we have to stick together in the press. If they try to exclude, one of us, that means they exclude all of us.
Mhm.
So we have that alive with Mike Volpe, with cases like that. Frank Parlato too. He's done a
Mhm.
lot of great work on the family courts. And so there's so many that cover this and the related areas with respect to the courts. So
Right. And a lot of people don't know anything about this until they end up going through it themselves. Then they're shocked.
nobody would believe the abyss that you could fall
Hmm.
in family court, and it's kind of the same playbook every time. And it's a shame too, because you have people who sometimes you have people who are, they're doing well and they go through a divorce and they manage to keep it together and they get out of it, and you take some scratches, you take some scars, but you get through. And then there are other people that just never recover. They get thrown into a divorce and that derails them for the rest of their life. And
Hmm.
it becomes a real problem. And that's, I think, what we need to look at. I think we need to look at more of a therapeutic jurisprudence. I think we need to look at, what is the law, as a non-therapeutic agent, especially in the family courts. If any court should be a court that wants to worry about therapeutic outcomes and mental
Hmm.
health outcomes and holistic uh, outcomes, it would be
Right.
a family. And I think that's something that really needs to be taken into consideration, that's not being done right now.
Right. I think these lawyers are ignoring the ACEs score. A lot of these lawyers are instigating the fighting between the parents. And they're also child psychological abusers, at least the lawyers I was dealing with.
Yeah, without question. I'll give you a perfect example. I know someone who's in a custody battle right now, and when the child's with the father's so crazy and controlling that if she calls from a blocked number because he doesn't want her to have him to have her number, she won't let the son pick up. And she says it's for the child's safety. He can't pick up the block number to give it to the son. Well, the lawyer for the father is parroting this crazy idea in the court. What do you think about it? Oh, it's a block number, and therefore, for the child's safety, she cannot call from a blocked number. What, are you kidding me? Are you like a 3-year-old? The argument doesn't make any sense. You
Mm,
pick up back in the old days, we didn't have a caller ID. The phone would ring, you'd pick it up, you'd say, "Hello, who is this?" you know, and
yeah.
and and the sad part is these judges entertain this crap, and
Yes.
that's part of the issue. Do you think that if you think that's why I like the Judge Judy test.
Hmm.
You think that if you brought that in front of Judge Judy, well, it's a restricted number that came in, and we have to be sure that what's going to happen if the call is from a restricted number. You think that would pass the Judge Judy test? Come on. And that's some of the issues that we have in the family court, and the lawyers make mountains out of molehills,
Hmm.
and the mountains they've made out of molehills turn into real problems because of the trauma
Oh,
that's close to the children. And they're the ones who are the ones that are the separators. They're the ones who are moving the children around. They're the ones and the courts are the ones that are trafficking the children to the highest bidder. Which parent can pay the bill? I have plenty of cases. I could talk about Karen Riordan in Connecticut in the Christopher Ambrose case. That case was egregious, and you have a guy who's a wealthy Connecticut blue blood, basically, who has a law degree, and you have this poor woman who was a teacher, and she was railroaded by the Connecticut establishment and the courts. Finally, the first child, Mia, the eldest, just aged out. She just turned 18, and
mm,
she's out of harm's way as far as Christopher Ambrose is concerned, but there's still two other kids,
mm,
right? And that becomes the issue, is the age out. That's the only way out of these courts in a lot of circumstances. We see this in Chicago in the Gerard case. Gwen and Grace Gerard, they're about to age out in their case, and that's the one that I said with the Bierman firm and just some egregious things happening in that case. But the Judge Fernandez just recused herself. She's probably the fifth or sixth or seventh judge in this case that's left, because they don't want to be involved in the corruption. They don't want to be brought in. There's a federal RICO case there, and now the strategy is hopefully the girls age out.
yeah.
And that becomes the strategy. They got to hit 18. It's kind of like the old days where you're running for the state lines. If I get to the state lines, then they're not going to be able to get me. If I hit
Hmm.
18 years old, and when you think about that, what was that? The state lines. That was a lot. That was slavery, right? That was the antebellum South. That was the Fugitive Slave Act. That was some of those other issues in America, where if you got to a certain state or you got to a certain place, you'd be okay, and you weren't okay. That's where we're at. We have almost a really scary system in the family courts where they take control over you. They take control over your life. I have plenty of people that say, "Look, I wish that they would charge me with a crime, and I'd go to criminal court because
Hmm.
then at least I know I would have rights."
And you'd have a
You know,
jury.
you have a jury, especially Frank Parlato. I was with Frank Parlato the other day, and he was talking all about that. He was talking all about how the right to a jury and the right to jury nullification and potentially the rights to a jury in a family court would solve a lot of these problems that
Hmm.
we have. There's no one that could supersede the power of a jury, and that may very well, and in his opinion, might be the answer to a lot of our problems in the justice system. But yeah, you don't have any rights in that court. And
No.
and speaking of Frank Parlato, he's written a lot about, and I've written a bunch about these debtors' prisons.
Mm.
There
There.
are these judges that put and frankly, there's a point where back Andrew Jackson did away with debtors' prisons in the United States back in the 1830s.
Hmm.
Um, but but there was always the idea that your ability to pay bears no relationship to your obligation to pay for your children and their needs, right? For that very specific issue. So you could be incarcerated for contempt for punishment purposes in order to motivate you to pay for your kids, right? And I think that's fine. If you're not going to pay for your kids, the judge can tell you, look, we're going to put you in there for a week and see how you feel. And if you want to come out and pay for your kids, then you come pay for your kids.
Hmm.
It's been abused. It's been taken where they don't throw you in there for a week. They throw you in there for months and months and months. And they also don't do it just for child support payments. Now they're doing it for all sorts of payments, for court appointeds and for attorney's fees. So
Hmm.
imagine you're going to jail for failure to pay attorney's fees. Now, Sarah Wallace, the great investigative journalist out of New York, NBC4, she did a story, and I've covered it as well, in front of a judge in New York Supreme Court named Kathleen Waterman Marshall, who ordered a pediatric anesthesiologist who's maybe 170 pounds soaking wet, never got a parking ticket, never got a speeding ticket. He could not liquidate an account quickly enough to pay the lawyer's fees, and he spent 2 weeks in Rikers Island. I don't have to tell you, you go to Rikers Island, you take your life into your own.
Hmm.
This woman sending people to Rikers Island in due course, as a matter of as a matter of fact. And she's not alone. There are these judges throughout the country that are turning family court into a debtor's prison. I
Hmm.
have David Weigel himself. He's in front of Judge Tandra Dawson in the same court, and he's petrified that that's what they're trying to do to him, only because he has the temerity to speak out. He's trying to organize, and they're going to try to find a way to put him in jail for no reason whatsoever. And this guy is a Columbia Business School graduate and a top money manager and one of the best guys that you're going to find. He's really just a good person and a very excellent professional. And they're talking about putting him into Rikers Island just for their convenience, the convenience of the judiciary. Now he went there before because of a silver bullet,
Hmm.
right? And Daniel Notes is the attorney in the case, who is a well-known disciple of Raoul Felder, who was the great divorce attorney in New York. And Felder was actually was brilliant. He really was a great guy. Notes not so much. Notes is basically the thug carbon copy.
Hmm.
And and what he does is he does exactly what you say. He creates drama in the courtroom. He asks for ex parte orders of protection and this and that and the other thing. They claim silver bullet. They claim he coaches his clients to say this, that, and the other thing because they say the same thing in every case. And I don't know how, just by virtue of the magical numerosity, that of all the cases where all these things happen, they only happen to Daniel Notes' clients. So if there's an apparent pattern there that you have to question whether it's coaching, and David has alleged that in his papers, and several others have alleged they believe that he coaches clients into silver bullets and gets
Hmm. Hmm.
men thrown into prison, and then a whole cascade of things. So then not only you have a family court issue, you have a criminal court issue. You get in places like New York. And other states, there are specialized parts. So now there's a criminal case and there's a silver bullet where they come in, and the silver bullet is where they come in and they institute and make a false report or get
Hmm.
the criminal involved. Well, you go to a specialized part. In New York, it's the IDV, the domestic violence part.
Hmm.
And that becomes, you can't get out of the IDV. It's like the Hotel California. You can check
No.
out, but you can never leave. And so they bring you into this case. And so let's say your divorce started 5 years ago and there was a silver bullet, and the case gets dismissed, right? The criminal case gets dismissed, right? And there was no criminal finding or anything else. You're still in the IDV part. And that's David for the next 5 years, and still in this IDV part. You would think that they would move you out. Nope, they keep you in that IDV part. And when he was in the court, he's told the story before. The dredges of the earth are in that courtroom, because you think there are people that belong in the IDV part, and the dredges of the earth are in that. And Notes makes a career out of putting, genuinely good people into that part. And that's what a lot of these lawyers do. They take genuinely good people and put them on their worst behavior. And they extract money, and they extract time, and they extract their life from them. How many
Well,
people do you know that have lost years of their life dealing with this family court, fraud, this family court monster, and it's a shame, it really is.
what, yeah, what I had found was that, for instance, I had two emotional abuse charges that I was cleared of, but the family court judge continued the false narrative that I was emotionally abusive to my kids, even though the CPS judge had cleared me of it. So that is a completely fraudulent judge, that God dealt with him later. And then the child support judge, Judge Elizabeth Kelly of Erie County, she did not look at the past history as to why the ex was forcing me to pay child support. Because I had the silver bullet allegation that cost me my 23-year career as a nurse, and she didn't care. So these judges aren't looking at evidence. They don't care about the evidence. I think family court should just be abolished and take it to civil court where we can have juries if we want and have things done possibly the right way.
Yeah, well, that would be a drastic change, and it wouldn't be what it is. And the problem is we got a lot of lawyers out there,
Hmm.
and you have some very talented lawyers that become judges, that just justices in the federal system, and top judges and justices in the state system. And then you have others that are great lawyers that make a lot of money because they're good at what they do. They constitutional lawyers or commercial lawyers or a lot of other things. Then you go down the pecking order. You have
Hmm.
the guys who chase ambulances and dog bites, and then you have the people who really can't do much. You have some good criminal defense attorneys. You have others that kind of run people through the system, and then you get down to the family, and you have the family court becomes a supplemental income for a lot of people that do either personal injury or criminal law, and there are others that just do family court because you basically you need a law degree and you need half a brain. I don't even think you need
Yeah,
half a brain. You just got
no.
to be able to show up. You have to be able to. I think the breath test. You can if you breathe. And they might be able to get a few lawyers in with the Weekend at Bernie's method. You could probably get a
Hmm.
few lawyers for a few weeks after they're dead, and
Hmm.
nobody would even realize that they were dead in family court. So
Yeah.
it becomes one of those things. So the question goes out: how do you fix this? And you know, Michael has some great ideas. There are other groups out there that are doing good stuff. So
Hmm.
um, and I write about it. I expose the corruption on these issues. So it is what it is. But
Yeah.
some of the stuff I'm talking about, I talk about stuff not just family court, but I do some stuff related to family court
Hmm.
as well. One of the big things I'm focused on now is cancel culture,
Hmm.
and cancel culture is big for me because I see it in its kernel. It's kind of related to what we have societally with family court. I believe that we have a situation where, and I like to call it cultural Marxism. I
Hmm.
really think that's what it is. I think that the family courts have allowed to get where they've gotten because the family has been destroyed. I think civility has been destroyed. The world that we had back in the 1950s, 1960s, where people were courteous to their neighbors and were friendly, and it's not, that's not the world we have anymore. And it's been almost amplified and turbocharged by the media and a lot of other things. And then we have it now with social media, and you add that to what happened in the pandemic, where
Mhm.
everybody was in front of their screens the whole time, isolated from human contact. Is we had a situation where cancel culture ran amok. There was
Mhm.
cancellations everywhere, but now you have this whole subclass of these social media influencers that do cancel culture. That's what they do, and I'm fighting a few of them right now. And that's what I do. I go out there, I find the people that are doing some pretty egregious stuff, and I call them on it. The same way I call a family court judge, because these people, and judges all over the place that are corrupt. It doesn't have to be family court. It could be a federal judge. It could be a state court judge. It could be any type of case. If they're acting and are a public servant, a judge, a politician, any type of person of the public trust, and they're doing something wrong, you have to call them out. That's my job as a journalist,
Mhm.
shine the light on it. But these people in social media, especially these influencers, they now want to become the new justice, and that's scary. They think that they can destroy people's lives, that they can go in and turn the power of social media uh, on others. And one of them that I'm dealing with right now, his name is Danesh Nashirva, and Danesh is a TikToker. He's got over 2 million followers on TikTok. And
Mhm.
he basically came to prominence during the pandemic because he was the mask police. So what he would do is, if you weren't wearing your mask, he would get video of you with this mask, but no mask on, and then he would report you to your to where your job and everything else. He'd get people fired. He moved on from that to other issues, and he's a leftist. And he's got ties to the left, to the Democratic coalition against Donald Trump, Scott Dworkin, George Soros, and even
Mhm.
to the Chinese Communist Party and his methodology and some of those other things. And so he's a woke person. I'll in full disclosure, I am a very pro-Trump person. I'm pro-Israel. I'm pro conservative values. So I'll tell you that right away. So he's not somebody I would enjoy being around normally,
Mhm.
but he almost exclusively targets the traditional fabric of America. And it makes you have to wonder whether or not he's part of an active measure to try to destroy our society. But that's neither here nor there. What this guy does is he employs some of the worst tactics that you can, the most dishonest tactics that you can. He does AI, he does fake accounts, and he simulates outrage. So in the old days, if you had a situation, even today, you had a situation where a politician or a public official did something or was about to do something you didn't like, you could always call their office. You write the letter to the senator or the congressman or the congresswoman. You call the office. Today, you can email them. You do everything else. Well, he's taken that to another level. He's claiming that it's publicly protected for him to do, but what he does, he targets private persons. So he gets one of those videos that falls into, used to be the mask police, and now the masks aren't a thing. So he gets somebody that he perceives as either racist or bigoted or this or that. He comes up with some type of situation, and then he tells his 2 million TikTok followers, go get this person, go get him.
Oh.
And it's not like it's calling the congressman. It's not like it's calling a public office. He basically gives enough that he doxes them, where he reveals their private information, and so then the person's employer, right, or the local police, the local law enforcement, the local government gets inundated with phone calls, emails. If they have a business, the Yelp reviews, their social media gets inundated with people. And what we've discovered, and Frank Perlotto's been a big part of this, is that these are not real people. This is not 2 million followers of his.
Mhm.
This is AI driven. He's got some followers, but he doesn't have that number that he says he does. And he uses what are called fake accounts. They're called sock puppets. And he uses all these fake accounts that he has to pretend that they're other people. And he also uses AI to generate outrage. So what he
Oh.
can do is, instead of the 10 or 15 people or 20 people that might be motivated naturally to call the local police department on somebody, he'll generate 600 or 700 phone calls and emails and social media posts using artificial intelligence and computer means. And I think that crosses the threshold that we have today of
Mhm.
of a type of criminality. It's false reporting. I'll give one example of someone down here. I'm in Florida. I'm in Fort Myers, Florida area, and one of the people that he targeted down here, he's been targeting them for 3 years. And the week of the hurricane, when the hurricane was happening, one of the latest hurricanes, he was targeting the emergency services and targeting the police and targeting other governmental entities, complaining about this person, Jennifer Couture, and her husband Ralph Garamone, to the local government while they're preparing for a hurricane. Now, if you have a situation that's despicable, you have a situation where you're putting people's lives at risk just by abusing the 911 system or local government resources, that puts people at risk, and that's a crime. But doing it during a hurricane or natural disaster, that's the height of terrible. And so what happens, what this guy does, is he actually systematically destroys people's lives. And we have evidence that shows that PTSD, trauma that you get, it's the same type of brain impact that you'll have in family court. You get to the PTSD from these social media attacks, sustained social media attacks, and from other things like war. You have the same, the same type of brain situation from a violent attack, from a rape. They're the same category of things. You have a brain scan. Somebody who's been through family court, been through the mill, they have the same type of PTSD as somebody who was raped. And you have the same thing with cancel culture. So this guy is a bad dude, and I've been fighting him, and I think we're close on him. I think he's about to, because he crossed the threshold. He actually caused the death of a Texas high school football coach named Aaron Delator. And Aaron Delator basically was at a Walmart with his wife, and he had a punk 12-year-old kid run around throwing stuff. And he told the kid, he grabbed him by the collar and said, "What are you doing?" One of those things that you would expect a high school coach, or you'd expect, a male authority figure to do to a punk teenager, and say, "Come on." Well, there's no video of the actual incident. There's only video that Noshirvan posted, that Dinesh posted, of the aftermath, and a whole bunch of allegations. And he turned his people loose on the Denton school district in Texas, and the local police. The local police cleared Aaron Delator, but he believed that there's a law that happened after Jerry Sandusky and after Larry Nassar about the touching of children. And so if you touch a child as a coach, you go on this list, and it doesn't differentiate if it's touching in the way of grabbing him on the back of his collar and say, "What are you doing?" To all the way to grooming. It doesn't differentiate that. So if you get on that list, you're done as a coach. And he was a decorated coach for many years. He was scared to death to go on that list. And he ended up killing himself because of this stuff. The trauma that this guy had caused him over a sustained period, and he took his own life. And what we have now is this guy using, Noshirvan using this artificial means, this fraudulent means, this dishonesty, the system, going to the 911 system, going to the school board system, the simulated reports, through phone, through social media, through everything else, that crosses the line of a crime that can be criminally negligent homicide. So I'm expecting that he's going to be charged. And I know that there's a grand jury that is investigating right now and everything else, but I think this might be the end of cancel culture as we know it. I think that this guy, we might be the end of Dinesh, and I'm hoping it is, because we don't need that anymore in our society. And they talk about it a lot. He did this already, Dinesh, to the Supreme Court justices of the United States Supreme Court in 2022. After Roe v. Wade was overturned, he disagreed with that opinion, which is his right, and he went on to his viewers and he talked about it, which is his right. But then he doxed the Supreme Court justices. He provided their addresses, their home addresses. They provided places of worship. He provided where the children, go to school. And Justice Kavanaugh and his family were almost murdered because of this. You don't hear about this, but there was somebody that was picked up with burglary tools, weapons, and when he was questioned by law enforcement, said he was there to kill Justice Kavanaugh, because he was upset about the Dobbs opinion. Mentally disturbed individual who traveled from California. So Justice Kavanaugh and his children were at risk of being murdered. And this is the situation that this man helped to perpetuate and create. And he docks the Supreme Court. And under the last administration, in 2022, was not prosecuted. None of the people that engaged in any of this were prosecuted. The hope is that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel will come in and prosecute.
Hmm.
Not to do lawfare on anybody else, but to uphold the law and uphold public servants. Everybody,
Hmm.
from the president on down to the Supreme Court justices, to regular federal court justices and state court justices, and congressmen and women and senators, they're all public servants.
Hmm.
The greatest public service that a guy like Dinesh Nashirvan can do is to become a crash test dummy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Really and truly, the guy he serves no social purpose other than to harm,
Hmm.
especially when he's engaging in this dishonesty. So that's one of the things that I've been focused on of late. I have another that I'm working on as well with this guy named Jeremy Hales,
Hmm.
who has a show called What the Hales. And he's not as egregious as Dinesh, but he's done some things that are very questionable. And he used to be and he is almost like Storage Wars, where they go to the storage places and they buy the storage places and they get all the treasures out of the storage places.
Hmm.
That's how he started on YouTube. And he did okay with that. He still does okay with that. And that part of what he does is entertaining. But he decided, to get into a spat with his neighbor, and he realized that the spats and the legal stuff were drawing him 4 and 5 and 6 times as many viewers uh, than he had with his storage stuff. So he's getting 50,000 viewers for the storage stuff. He's getting 250 or 300,000 viewers for the other stuff for these neighbor spats. And so he's got a whole little echo chamber of other YouTubers that talk about the case. And the case that he has against his neighbors is basically a baseless case. It's a he said, she said defamation case, which could be resolved, like I said, in 30 minutes with a good judge. But the problem that I have with this guy, and I just put the article out yesterday, is about his anti-Semitism.
Hmm.
He was called, and him and everybody in his group calls the attorney, Bruce Matzkin, for his neighbor, who's Jewish. They call him Deuce Foreskin. They basically they've told him, we want you to come to Christ. You have a big nose. They talk about making a bobblehead nose of Bruce. And so I have Rabbi Jacob Belinsky, who's also
Hmm.
a family court a person who's an advocate and everything else. But Rabbi Belinsky actually opined about the statements that were being made by Jeremy Hales and some of the other people in his orbit. And he said that this is anti-Semitism. This is the denigration that you see that allows for racism and hate and bigotry to propagate. And they've normalized it. They go around and they call this guy Deuce Foreskin, and it's no good. It's really no good. So I'm going to hold this guy's feet to the fire a bit too, because listen. I don't mind him going and having, if he has a real legitimate grievance in a case and covering that and everything else. But what they had is they realized that Amber Heard and Johnny Depp made everybody a lot of money on the YouTube, these content creators. So they're trying to create their own little Amber Heard, Johnny Depp type moments. And they're using these court cases to drive content. And I don't mind that if it's a real court case. But to do something contrived, number one, and to be anti-Semitic in the process, number two, it's not something I'm going to stand for. And Mike Volpe, who's my podcast mate, he's Jewish, and he actually his family and he escaped from the Soviet Union when he was young, for the Jewish persecution there.
Hmm.
And so to think that you can just go out there and say these things, especially if you're a YouTube influencer that has millions of viewers, or a TikToker that has millions of viewers, and what you're doing is you're normalizing bigotry and hatred, and that's not right.
Hmm.
That's not right, and it becomes a problem when these people are in that area, and they're doing this type of stuff. So that's a lot of what I'm doing with the cancel culture, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that cancel culture is very disturbing. I talk to a lot of parents that are wondering why their kids have turned against them. They don't know why. They just up and suddenly won't speak to them anymore. Or there's been some influence in their life, or maybe they married someone who I don't know, turn them against their parents. It's just very, I don't know, where did this come from? Seriously.
I'll tell you where I believe it comes from.
Hmm.
I believe it's an active measure by by both Russia and China.
Hmm.
It's called subversion. This is what they did back in the Cold War in order to subvert the populace, and
Hmm.
we've allowed it to happen. You look at what's happening I went to Columbia University. That's my alma mater. You look at what's happening at Columbia and on the college campuses. How Jewish students can't go to school without fear.
Hmm.
You have an entire population that's being fed lies culturally, and that's what the idea is cultural Marxism. I believe. I believe it's cultural subversion, and what they're trying to do is feed the youth with all these ideas that are trying to destroy the fabric of America, trying to
Hmm.
destroy the nuclear family, trying to destroy the family unit as the basis for society, trying to destroy communities, trying to destroy your care for your neighbor, trying to destroy your respect that you have in your community and in your country. And that's what you have when you're behind a computer screen and you have no respect for the consequences. You don't have to deal with other people. You don't have to, have a full human interaction. And that becomes the problem of the whole society. And then it's very easy at that point for kids or whoever to be fed crazy ideas.
Hmm.
And Dinesh Nishirvan, I'll give you the perfect example. I put out an article the other day about one of the most egregious things that he does, and it's not the cancel culture stuff so much as he is grooming his own children for gender reassignment surgery. He has a whole video about how his son wants to be a girl, and he'll support his girl or his son to become a girl through gender reassignment. And that becomes the scariest type thing when you have people out there that are in society doing things like that. Thank God we have President Trump who has,
Hmm.
brought sanity back. In 2 weeks, he said brought sanity back to this country. But we still have an uphill battle because we have so much of this cultural subversion going, and that's the whole idea. They want to destroy the fabric of the country. They want to destroy the American tradition, our legal tradition, our Judeo-Christian tradition that our country is built on. You cannot understand the laws of our country, the Constitution, without understanding the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they want to throw that all out. And that's a big problem. You can't understand our country without understanding the family unit, and that's a big thing. And that's the one thing that China has, because central to China's society, and as bad as they are, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and what they do and the oppression and everything else, family is still the central unit in China.
Hmm.
They have not destroyed the family unit as central. What they're doing is they're trying to do that here, and Russia too, where the family unit's still central. They have not subverted there. They're trying to do that in America. They're trying to make America, and when you think about it, think about what they'll try to do. They'll try to destroy young children by these gender reassignment surgeries. And what do? They've become a situation where they can't be part of a family unit later on. They can't have their children of their own at a certain point.
Hmm.
You know what? Maybe I made a mistake when I was, 8 years old and I wanted to become somebody of the opposite sex, and my parents went along with it. Or the other thing that I see is these OnlyFans sites, and they target women, and I believe a lot of the money that's sustaining some of these women on the OnlyFans sites is foreign money, foreign subversion money, because if you give a woman 30, 40, $50,000 to for a few years in that lifestyle, and she makes other money doing other things, she becomes a young woman in her early 20s that then thereafter is damaged. She might end up in rehab for a whole bunch of years. She might end up in prison. But she'll never be in a situation where she could, in many cases, be a mother, be part of a family. She might be ruined for life, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to ruin, women for life through OnlyFans. They're trying to ruin men as well
Hmm.
uh, through porn addiction, through trying to take away the motivation and everything else. Jordan Peterson talks about it a lot. He talks about the women and that you could see within in 10 minutes on the internet today. Kings of empires in times past wouldn't see that many beautiful women in one place. and it kind of creates a situation where desires and there's a normalization of desires that's unhealthy. It was never seen before in human society, and so you have people that lose their motivation. They lose the motivation to go out and work hard. They lose the motivation to start a family. They lose the motivation to have children, to do the right thing in society. So that's part of the issue here as well. And that it's all tied into the family courts. It's all tied into our court system, our government system, our culture, the cancel culture. It's really a lot of it's tied in my mind.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I just I feel so bad for these parents that, you know, I just hear so much from them. And, you know, I take calls talking to parents about family court. And, you know, it's just, I sometimes I'm like, I don't know even how to help you. Or, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I can't really give good legal advice because there is no such thing. You know what I'm saying?
It's the truth.
You know, so, but I'm glad I had you on to speak out, and I'm still speaking out. And I'm glad Dave Weigel is speaking out, you know, and others. Uh, this has got to stop.
It's a battle, and the problem is that we all have certain levels of trauma, right? We
Hmm.
all have certain levels. Some people, and people react differently to trauma. Guys like me and Dave, they try to throw trauma at us. We try to throw it right back at them. We'll be the ones out in the front of the courthouse trying to fight people. But other people internalize it, and then they're damaged in a different way.
Hmm.
In a way, and so that's the problem. When you deal with trauma, it's about understanding that first and foremost. Because until you handle your own trauma and understand what's going on and process that, then you really can't be effective. And that's part of their game. Their game is to throw so much at you that you're not able to effectively combat them. They're misery merchants,
Hmm.
and that's part of what Dave's trying to do, and what Jill Jones Soderman and so many others, you and so many others are speaking out that are trying to get people past that first step, of trauma. Try to get out of the way of the misery and be able to deal with it, to be able to manage that, to be able to achieve goals.
Hmm.
And that's the first step, I think. It's the most important one.
Oh, definitely. Because after I left family court, I went into federal court. And then after that, I started this podcast in 2020. So I just took everything that I had that, you know, the I don't know what you want to call it, anger, upset. I just put it into trying to help other people since they took away my career as a nurse. I thought this is the way I can help people. This is going to have to be it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And you're doing a great job.
Oh, well, thank you. So are you. Yeah, I'd love to have you back on again. How can people contact you if they have any questions?
Behind me right here, I'll dunk for a second. They can look. It's luthmann.substack.com. That's my publication on Substack. I have a couple other little websites, but from there you can get to everything. And on there, you would have my email address, which is Richard.luthmann, Luthmann with two N's, at protonmail.com. You can email me there with tips or stories or just general inquiries. But yeah, and you can get there through Substack too. You can leave messages on Substack. I try to write prolifically. I try to put stuff out all the time on different issues, and I have several different verticals. So if you want to read the family court stuff, that's great. If you want to read some of the other stuff, that's great too. And yeah, so that's what I have going on.
Oh, I appreciate you for coming on. I could talk to you all day. But hey, don't jump off, okay? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you so much, Richard.luthmann, for explaining all of this, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much.